1 year after the Kresh attack, the Valorian system looked completely different. Ambassador Lyra stood on the main observation deck of the new orbital defense station. From here she could see everything. The 3 inhabited planets glowed peacefully below. Around them, dozens of sensor platforms floated in carefully calculated orbits. Defense satellites stood ready to protect against any attack. And most importantly, Valorian crews operated all of it. Today was special. Today 5 species would sign the Frontier Alliance Treaty. Valoria would officially join Earth and 3 other systems in a mutual defense pact. It was a historic moment. The first time Valoria had ever entered into a military agreement with anyone. The ceremony hall was crowded. Delegates from each member species filled the seats. Reporters from across the galaxy pressed against the barriers, their recording devices capturing everything. The Galactic Council had sent observers too, though they had not been invited. Lyra could see them in the back watching with worried expressions. Captain Jake Morrison stood at the central podium. Over the past year, he had become the unofficial spokesman for the Frontier Alliance. He wore his full dress uniform today, dark blue with medals that represented various campaigns and missions, but his manner was relaxed and friendly as always. "Today we create something new," Jake said. His voice carried clearly through the hall. "Not an empire, not a military dictatorship. Just a group of friends who have agreed to watch out for each other. The Frontier Alliance is built on a simple idea. When someone calls for help, we answer. No committees. No debate about whether they deserve assistance. We just go." He paused and looked around the hall. "Some people will say this is dangerous. They will say we are militarizing peaceful space. They will worry that we are building an army. To those people I say this, we are not looking for fights. We are looking for peace. But real peace requires strength. It requires the ability to say no to bullies and make that refusal stick." The audience murmured in agreement. Lyra could see the council observers shaking their heads. They did not approve, but they also could not deny the results. In the past year, pirate attacks in Frontier Alliance space had dropped by 80%. Raiders had learned that attacking Alliance members brought swift and overwhelming response. Word had spread quickly. Leave Alliance worlds alone or face the Deathworlders. Each of our member species brings something unique to this alliance, Jake continued. The Valorians bring agricultural expertise and medical knowledge. The Keltar bring advanced manufacturing and materials science. The Drax contribute navigation and stellar cartography. The Pilan offer expertise in terraforming and environmental systems. And Earth brings military training and defensive technology. Together we are stronger than any of us could ever be alone. He gestured to the signing table where 5 data pads waited. "Now let us make it official." One by one, the representatives came forward. Lyra was third in line. When her turn came, she placed her hand on the scanning pad. The device read her biosignature and recorded her agreement. Simple as that. Valoria was now part of something bigger than itself. After the ceremony ended, a reception was held in the Grand Hall. Lyra found herself surrounded by well-wishers and reporters. Everyone wanted to know about the famous rescue, about the battle that had lasted only 12 minutes, about what it was like to meet humans for the first time. She answered their questions patiently. Yes, the humans were intimidating at first. Yes, their military capabilities were far beyond anything Valoria had imagined. No, they had never demanded anything in return for their help. Yes, she trusted them completely now. Eventually, she managed to escape to a quieter balcony. Jake was already there, looking out at the stars. He glanced over as she approached. "Too many people in there for you too?" Lyra laughed. "I am not used to being famous. Before all this, I was just a mid-level diplomat handling trade disputes. And now you are the person who convinced the Valorians to join a military alliance. That is pretty impressive for someone who handled trade disputes." "I had good teachers," Lyra said. She looked at him seriously. "Jake, I wanted to thank you, not just for saving us a year ago, but for everything since then. You changed my entire worldview. You showed me that strength and kindness are not opposites. They can exist together in the same person." Jake was quiet for a moment. "That means a lot to hear. Honestly, a year ago I was not sure this would work. I worried that you would see us as conquerors, that you would reject our help out of fear. But you took a chance on us. That took real courage. What choice did I have? The Kresh were going to kill billions of my people. I had to do something, even if it meant calling monsters for help." "Do you still think we are monsters?" Lyra smiled. Yes, but I mean that as a compliment now. You are monsters to the monsters. Predators who hunt predators. The galaxy needs that. Peaceful species like mine, we have been lucky for so long. We forgot that danger still exists out here in the dark. You reminded us. More importantly, you gave us the tools to protect ourselves. They stood together watching the stars. Somewhere out there, human ships were on patrol. Other species were learning that they did not have to face the dangers alone. The Frontier Alliance was growing. What happens now? Lyra asked. The Council observers looked very unhappy today. They do not like what we are building. They will adapt or they will become irrelevant, Jake said bluntly. The Council had 40 years to help species like yours. They chose bureaucracy and caution over action. We chose differently. History will judge which approach was better. Do you think there will be conflict between Earth and the Council? I hope not. We do not want conflict with anyone. But we will not stop helping people just because the Council disapproves. They can join us or get out of the way. Those are the only two options we are offering. Lyra thought about this. A year ago, such bold talk would have terrified her. Now she found it reassuring. The galaxy needed someone willing to act decisively, someone who cared more about saving lives than following proper procedures. You know what the strangest part of all this is? Lyra said quietly. A year ago, I read your file and learned that Earth is classified as a death world. I learned that humans are apex predators. I was terrified. Now I am glad you are apex predators. I am glad your world was so harsh. Because that harshness created people who understand that survival is not guaranteed. That peace requires protection. That sometimes kindness means being willing to fight. Jake nodded slowly. You understand us better than the Council ever has. They see the predator and stop looking. You saw past that to what we actually do with those instincts. That is why this alliance works. We are not hiding what we are. We are just using our nature for good instead of evil. Inside the hall, someone called for Jake. He was needed for more diplomatic meetings and photo opportunities. He sighed but smiled. The price of fame, Lyra said with amusement. Jake started to head back inside but paused at the door. Ambassador, can I share one more thing? Something I think about often. Of course, a year ago you sent out a distress call. You were hoping the Council would respond. Instead, you got us. I wonder sometimes what would have happened if the Council had answered instead. Would they have arrived in time? Would they have stopped the crash? Or would they still be debating proper procedures while your people died? He did not wait for an answer. He just gave her a knowing look and went back inside. Lyra stayed on the balcony a bit longer. She thought about his question. She knew the answer. The Council would not have arrived in time. They would have debated and formed committees and filed reports. And billions of Valorians would have died while the proper procedures were being followed. They had asked for help. But the Deathworlder fleet came instead of diplomats. And that had made all the difference. That single decision to act rather than debate had saved everything she loved. Her world. Her people. Her future. The humans were dangerous. There was no denying that. They came from a world that had tried to kill them for millions of years. They had sharp teeth and predator eyes and military technology far beyond most species. They were everything the Galactic Council feared, but they were also everything the galaxy needed. Protectors who actually protected, warriors who fought for others instead of themselves, friends who showed up when it mattered most. Lyra looked up at the stars. Out there in the dark, ships from 5 different species were learning to work together, learning to trust each other, building something new, not an empire. Not a dictatorship. Just friends watching out for friends. The Frontier Alliance, born because one peaceful species had called for help, and dangerous Deathworlders had answered that call without hesitation. Lyra smiled to herself. Let the Council worry and complain. Let them fear what humanity might become. She knew the truth. The Deathworlders were not the threat. They were the solution, and the galaxy was better for having them in it. She went back inside to rejoin the celebration. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight was for hope, for friendship, for the knowledge that when darkness came calling, someone would answer, someone would fight, someone would stand between the innocent and the monsters, and those protectors wore the faces of predators, because sometimes the scariest thing in the room made the very best friend you could ever hope to find. 6 months passed. Ambassador Lyra stood in the command center of the newly built Valorian Defense Network. Around her, technicians sat at their stations monitoring displays that showed the entire star system. Early warning sensors, communication relays, and defensive platforms now formed a protective web around all three inhabited worlds. It had taken time to reach this point. The Council had spent weeks debating before finally agreeing to accept Earth help. Even after they agreed, many Valorians felt uncomfortable with the changes. Building weapons, even defensive ones, went against everything they believed in. But the memory of Valor 7 burning in space had been very persuasive. Dead worlds did not have principles. The humans had been incredibly patient throughout the process. They sent engineers and teachers instead of soldiers. They taught Valorians how to operate the systems, how to maintain them, and how to make their own decisions about defense. There was never any pressure to do things the human way, only offers to help when asked, and slowly, somewhat reluctantly, the Valorians had learned. Not just about defense systems, but about the wider galaxy too. They had been isolated for so long, protected more by luck and obscurity than anything else. The crash attack had shattered that comfortable isolation forever. Now they understood the truth. Space was not empty. It was full of different species. Some were peaceful like the Valorians, others were not. And being unprepared was not virtuous. It was just dangerous and foolish. Ambassador, Soren called from his station. We are picking up a signal from the outer sensor markers. A ship is coming in. The identification codes say it is human. Is it an expected arrival? Yes, ma'am. It is Captain Morrison. He said he would come back to check on our progress. Lyra smiled. Jake had stayed in contact over the months. He sent messages with advice and encouragement. He had become something close to a friend, though she never would have predicted that 6 months ago when she first saw those predator eyes. Clear him for approach. I will meet him at the orbital station. An hour later, she stood in the docking bay watching Jake's shuttle arrive. When he stepped out, she was struck by how much more comfortable she felt around humans now. They were still intimidating, still clearly built like predators. But she understood them better now. She understood that having predator instincts did not automatically mean predator behavior. Humans could be gentle when gentleness was needed. Ambassador, Jake greeted her warmly. It is very good to see you again. The defense network looks impressive from orbit. We had excellent teachers, Lyra replied. Your engineers were very patient with us. We asked many basic questions and they never made us feel stupid for asking. They told me your people were quick learners. That is high praise from them. My engineers do not give compliments easily. They walked through the station together. Jake looked at the various systems with a professional eye. He asked questions and offered suggestions, but mostly he just nodded with approval at what he saw. You have done very well, he said finally. This system would make most raiders seriously reconsider attacking. And if they are stupid enough to attack anyway, you will see them coming with enough time to call for help. That was exactly our goal, Lyra said. We still do not have warships like yours. We are not warriors by nature. But at least now we can defend ourselves long enough for allies to arrive and help us. That is all you need, Jake assured her. Nobody expects you to become warriors. That is not who your people are. But being able to say no and actually mean it is very important. They reached an observation deck that looked out over the planet below. The blue-green world hung peacefully in space. Its 3 continents were visible through wisps of white cloud. It looked so calm and beautiful. Hard to believe it had almost died just 6 months ago. I have news to share, Jake said. The Galactic Council has been asking many questions about Earth relationship with Valoria. Apparently word got out about what happened here. About how we responded to your distress call. Is that going to be a problem for you? Not for us, Jake said with a slight smile. But it is making the Council very nervous. 3 more species have contacted us in the last month. They all want similar help to what we gave you. It seems the Council policy of non-interference is not as popular as they thought it was. What will you do about these new requests? The same thing we did here. Help them help themselves. The Council can complain all they want. We are not breaking any laws. We are just making friends and helping people who ask for help. Lyra looked at him thoughtfully. You are changing the entire galaxy, you know. Before you came, the Council word was absolute law. Species like mine simply accepted that we needed the Council for protection. But you have shown there is another way to do things. Good, Jake said simply. The Council is not evil. They mean well. But they are very bureaucratic. They move slowly and carefully. Sometimes you cannot afford to wait for committee approval. When someone is actively trying to kill you, the galaxy needs more options for how things get done. And humanity is providing those new options. We are trying our best, Jake said. Look, I will not pretend we are perfect. Earth has many problems. Our history has some very dark chapters. But we learned something important during our long climb up from being primitive animals. Being strong does not mean being cruel. Being dangerous does not mean being evil. And sometimes the scariest thing in the room makes the best friend you could possibly ask for. Are you speaking from experience? Lyra asked with a slight smile. Always, Jake confirmed. Ambassador, I want to make you an official offer. Earth is creating something we are calling the Frontier Alliance. It is not exactly a military pact. More like a mutual defense agreement. Members agree to help each other, share technology, and trade freely. No obligations beyond that basic friendship. We would very much like Valoria to be a founding member. Lyra thought carefully about this. 6 months ago, she would have refused immediately. Any kind of military alliance would have been completely unthinkable. But so much had changed since then. Valoria had changed. Her people had learned hard lessons about the real galaxy. The Council will need to vote on it. But I believe they will agree. We have learned that peace is precious, but it is not free. Peace needs to be actively protected. Now you are starting to think like a Deathworlder, Jake said with clear approval in his voice. Is that meant as a compliment? From us, absolutely. It means you understand that survival is not guaranteed. You have to work for it every single day. But that does not mean you have to work alone. The strongest people are the ones who know when to ask for help. They stood together in comfortable silence, looking out at the peaceful planet below. Somewhere out in the dark space beyond, human warships quietly patrolled the outer reaches of the system, silent guardians watching for threats. In the command center behind them, Valorian technicians monitored systems that would warn them of any danger long before it arrived. The galaxy was still dangerous. That would probably never change. But the Valorians were no longer helpless victims waiting for disaster. They had learned to stand up for themselves. They had learned that sometimes you needed sharp teeth, even if you chose not to use them often. Most importantly, they had learned they were not alone. When they had called for help in their darkest moment, someone had answered. Not the bureaucratic council with its committees and procedures, but the Deathworlders from Earth who understood that sometimes you had to act fast and ask questions later. The Valorians had asked for help. The Deathworlder fleet had come instead of diplomats, and somehow that had been exactly what they needed. Jake looked at Lyra and seemed to read her thoughts. Welcome to the neighborhood, he said quietly. It is dangerous out here, but you are not facing it alone anymore. We watch out for our friends. Lyra's skin flickered through colors that meant acceptance, hope, and gratitude. No, she agreed. We are not alone, and that makes all the difference in the universe. For the first time since the Kresh had appeared in their system 6 months ago, that thought did not frighten her. Instead, it brought her deep comfort and peace. The monsters were on their side now, and in a dangerous galaxy, that was the best protection any peaceful species could hope for. 3 days after the battle, the Valorian Council met to speak with the human representatives. The grand chamber was carved from crystal that caught their sunlight and split it into beautiful colors. Representatives from all 3 inhabited worlds filled the room. The mood was nervous. Lyra stood at the center podium. She watched as Captain Jake Morrison and Commander Lisa Grant entered the chamber. The humans moved with that same controlled grace she had noticed before. But there was no aggression in how they carried themselves. Jake had left all his weapons on his ship. It was a gesture of trust that many counselors had noticed and appreciated. The captain looked younger than Lyra had expected, maybe only 40 years old by Valorian counting. His face had lines and marks that suggested hard experience rather than just age. When he spoke, his voice carried easily through the large chamber even though he did not seem to be speaking loudly. Honored council members, thank you for meeting with us. I know our arrival was unexpected. I know our methods may have shocked you. I want to address that directly and honestly. Senior Counselor Thran was the oldest member of the assembly. He raised a shaking hand. Captain Morrison, we are grateful that you saved us, but we must understand something. Your species is unknown to us beyond some classified warnings in our database. Those warnings paint you as very dangerous beings. We are dangerous, Jake agreed. A ripple of worry went through the chamber. I will not lie to you about that. Humanity comes from a world that tried very hard to kill us for millions of years. We evolved in an environment where everything was a threat. The weather, the wildlife, the diseases, everything that shaped who we became. It made us survivors. It made us fighters. Then why should we trust you? Another counselor called out. Why would you not simply take what you want from us just like the Kresh tried to do? Jake was quiet for a moment. He seemed to be choosing his words carefully. Because being dangerous does not mean being cruel. Yes, Earth made us tough, but it also taught us other important things. It taught us the value of working together, because no human survived alone on our world. It taught us to protect the weak because we were all weak once. It taught us that strength comes with responsibility. He paused, then continued. My great-grandmother lived through the resource wars. That was back before humanity reached the stars. She used to tell me that the strongest person in the room has two choices. They can use that strength to take whatever they want, or they can use it to protect those who cannot protect themselves. She said the first choice is easy and the second is hard, but only the second choice lets you sleep peacefully at night. Pretty words, Thren said. His tone was not unkind. But how can we be sure they are more than just words? Lisa stepped forward. Counselor, if we wanted to conquer you, we could have done it already. We have the firepower. We have the ships. We have the technology. But we are not here for conquest. We are here because 40 years ago, when humanity first met the wider galaxy, we were warned to stay away from everyone. The Galactic Council looked at us and saw predators. They were scared of what we might become. She gestured around the beautiful crystal chamber. That hurt us deeply. It still hurts. Because we are not monsters. We are just people who happen to come from a very tough world. So we decided to prove the Council wrong. Every time someone calls for help, we answer. Every time someone is threatened by pirates or raiders, we respond. Not for payment. Not for territory. Because it is the right thing to do. You do this for free? A counselor asked. The skepticism was clear in her voice. Not exactly, Jake said. We do not want your money or your resources. But we do want something. We want allies. We want trading partners. We want friends. The galaxy is a big place and humanity is still new here. We would rather build relationships than take planets by force. Lyra spoke up. The humans have offered to help us build defensive systems. Not offensive weapons, but shields, sensors, and early warning networks. They want to teach us how to protect ourselves. Why? Thren asked. Why not keep us dependent on you for protection? That would give you more power over us because we cannot be everywhere, Jake said bluntly. We want to help, but we are not building an empire. We cannot maintain fleets in every star system. Better to teach you to defend yourselves. There's an old Earth saying, give someone a fish and they eat for a day. Teach them to fish and they eat for life. The council members talked among themselves in low voices. Lyra watched their skin colors shift through various shades that meant they were thinking hard about this decision. Finally, Thren spoke again. Captain Morrison, Commander Grant, your offer is generous, but we must think very carefully about this. The Valorian way has always been peace. To arm ourselves even just for defense feels like we would be betraying our core principles. I respect that deeply, Jake said. But I would ask you to think about something. The Kresh did not care about your principles. They saw weakness and they exploited it. 2 million of your people are dead because you could not defend them. That is not peace. That is just being a victim. The words were harsh, but they were also true. Lyra saw several counselors physically flinch at hearing them spoken so directly. There is no shame in being peaceful, Lisa added in a gentler tone. But peace only works when everyone respects it. When someone does not respect it, you need to be able to say no and make that refusal stick. That is not betraying your principles. That is protecting them so they can continue to exist. The council took a break to discuss things privately. As the humans left the chamber, Lyra followed them out into the hallway. Captain, she called out. Jake turned around. Ambassador. I wanted to thank you personally, Lyra said, not just for saving us from the Kresh, but for understanding how difficult this is for my people. Many would simply tell us we are foolish for not having weapons. You are being patient with us. Change is always hard, Jake said, especially when circumstances force it on you before you are ready. But you will get through this. Your people are stronger than they realize. I hope you are right, Lyra said. Jake smiled. Can I share something with you, Ambassador? When I was growing up on Earth, I thought humans were the only intelligent species in the universe. Then we met the Talani and discovered we were wrong. Do you know what my first reaction was? What was it? I was terrified. I was 12 years old and I remember thinking that these aliens might come to Earth and hurt us. I thought they might have weapons we could not fight against. I thought they might see us as primitive and weak. For months I had nightmares about it, but that did not happen, Lyra said. No, it did not. The Talani were cautious but kind. They shared technology with us. They helped us understand how to travel between stars more efficiently, and slowly I learned that being different from someone does not mean being enemies with them. My point is that fear of the unknown is natural. What matters is what you do with that fear. You can let it paralyze you, or you can let it motivate you to become stronger. Lyra felt some of her worry ease. You are a wise person, Captain Morrison. Not wise, just experienced, and maybe a little stubborn. Lisa says I never know when to give up on people. Lisa laughed softly. I said you never give up on doing what is right. There is a difference. The three of them stood in the hallway for a moment. Outside the crystal walls, Lyra could see the blue sun starting to set. Its light painted everything in shades of gold and amber. Whatever the council decides, Lyra said quietly. I want you to know that I am grateful you came when we called. You gave my people hope when we had none left. That is what we do, Jake said simply. We show up when it matters. Now let us hope your council sees the wisdom in preparing for a dangerous galaxy. They will, Lyra said with more confidence than she felt. They have to, because the alternative is to remain helpless, and we have all seen where that leads. Ambassador Lyra stood in the landing bay of the orbital station. She tried very hard not to show her fear. Around her, a dozen Valorian officials waited nervously. Behind them, security guards stood ready with their weapons. Not that those weapons would help much if things went wrong. The humans had just destroyed 12 warships in minutes. What could a few guards with stun guns possibly do against beings like that? The human shuttle came down through the atmospheric shield with smooth grace. It was smaller than Lyra had expected. Where Valorian ships were curved and organic-looking, this shuttle was all sharp angles and flat surfaces. It touched down so gently that Lyra barely heard the landing thrusters fire. The hatch opened with a hiss. Lyra felt her skin flicker with anxiety colors despite her best efforts to stay calm. The first human stepped out. Lyra caught her breath. The file had described humans as walking on two legs with bodies that had two sides that mirrored each other. What the file had not explained was the sheer presence these beings carried with them. The human was shorter than a Valorian, but much wider and more solid-looking. She wore a dark blue uniform with symbols Lyra did not recognize. Her hair was dark and pulled back tightly. Her eyes swept across the landing bay with a look that was both curious and calculating. Those eyes. Lyra had never seen eyes like that on any intelligent species. They faced straight forward like a predator, designed for tracking prey. They were not on the sides of the head like civilized species. When those eyes locked onto Lyra, she felt like a small animal being watched by a hunter. The human walked forward with smooth, controlled movements. Every step looked purposeful. She stopped at a respectful distance and did something with her face. Lyra recognized it from her quick research as a human smile. The expression was meant to be friendly, but all Lyra could focus on were the teeth. Most of them were flat for chewing plants, yes, but there were also pointed teeth, canine teeth designed for tearing meat. Predator teeth, Ambassador Lyra. The human spoke in perfect Valorian. I am Commander Lisa Grant. I work as a diplomatic liaison for United Earth Command. Captain Morrison sends his regards. He wanted me to coordinate relief efforts with your government. Lyra forced herself to respond calmly. Commander Grant, welcome to Valoria. We are very grateful for your help. The speed of your response was unexpected. We were in the region on patrol, Lisa said easily. When we picked up your distress call, we figured it was better to come first and ask permission later. I hope we did not overstep. No, not at all, Lyra said quickly. You saved our world. We owe you more than we can ever repay. Lisa's smile got a bit wider. No debt necessary, Ambassador. That is what neighbors do, right? Besides, we do not like raiders and bullies very much. Another human came out of the shuttle. This one was male and taller than Lisa. His hair was lighter in color. Even when standing still, there was something coiled about him. Something that suggested violence being held back by choice. Lyra's skin flashed pale blue in instinctive fear. This is Lieutenant Carl Lopez, Lisa continued. He is our tactical specialist. He will be working with your defense forces to make sure nothing like this happens again. Carl nodded once, a sharp movement. His eyes were already scanning the landing bay. Exits, positions, angles. It was automatic for him. The mark of someone who had been in too many dangerous situations to ever fully relax. Perhaps we should move to a conference room, Lyra suggested. We have much to discuss. Lead the way. As they walked through the station corridors, Lyra could not help but notice how other Valorians reacted to the humans. Nobody ran or panicked, but everyone gave the humans plenty of space. Skin colors shifted to cautious yellows and wary greens. Even the environmental system seemed to react. The temperature dropped several degrees in response to the extra heat the humans naturally put off. Lisa seemed unaware of the reaction. Or maybe she was just used to it. She walked with easy confidence, asking questions about the station layout, the Valorian government, and how much damage the crash had caused. Carl stayed quiet but alert. His eyes never stopped moving. They reached the conference room. As everyone settled around the oval table, Lyra activated the holographic display. It showed their star system with markers indicating the destroyed crash ships and the positions of the human task force. I must admit, Lyra began carefully, your military capabilities are far beyond what we expected. The battle lasted only minutes. We have never seen anything like it. Lisa exchanged a glance with Carl. How long do your battles typically last? Days, sometimes weeks, Lyra admitted. Ships maneuver around each other. They negotiate. They make threats. Combat is usually a last resort after every other option has been tried. Even then, it is done with restraint. Completely destroying enemy vessels is considered barbaric. Carl let out a low whistle. Days of threats and posturing. That explains a lot. Explains what? Lyra asked. Why the Kresh thought they could get away with this, Lisa said. They were used to fighting opponents who gave them time to think and time to react. They did not know what hit them. In human military thinking, we do not give the enemy time. We hit hard, hit fast, and end the fight before it really begins. It is actually more merciful that way. Fewer casualties on both sides. Merciful, Lyra repeated slowly. The word seemed wrong when talking about such devastating violence. Yet she supposed it was true. A quick death was better than a slow one, and if the Kresh had been allowed to continue their attack, millions more would have died. Perhaps. It is just very different from what we are used to. I imagine it is, Lisa said gently. Ambassador, I do not want to overstep, but I reviewed your system defensive capabilities. With all respect, you have almost none. Those patrol ships were designed for mining and basic security. They would not stop any serious military attack. We never needed more, Lyra said. She could hear the defensiveness in her own voice. We are a peaceful people. War's not our way. War is not any one way, Lisa countered. It is just a reality of the universe. The galaxy has predators, Ambassador. Some of them walk on two legs and fly starships. Being peaceful is wonderful, but it will not stop someone like the Kresh from taking what they want. So what do you suggest? Carl leaned forward. Let us help you build real defenses. Nothing aggressive. Just enough to make raiders think twice before attacking. Early warning systems, better shields, point defense networks. We can have contractors here within a month to start the work. Lyra thought about this. Militarizing their world went against every Valorian principle, but so did watching their colonies burn. I would need to bring this before the council. They will have concerns and questions, of course, Lisa said. Take all the time you need. Meanwhile, Captain Morrison has ordered the task force to stay in your system for 2 weeks. We will run patrols and make sure nobody else gets any ideas about attacking you. You would do that? Stay here and protect us. That is what we came here for, Lisa said simply. You called for help. We answered. That does not end just because the immediate danger is gone. For the first time since the crisis began, Lyra felt something loosen in her chest. These humans, these terrifying apex predators from their death world, were not here to conquer or control. They were here to help. It was strange and unsettling, but it was also oddly comforting. Maybe having monsters on your side was not such a bad thing after all. At least these monsters protected the innocent and destroyed the wicked. In a dangerous galaxy, that might be exactly what peaceful species needed. Not more peaceful neighbors, but strong friends who understood that sometimes violence was necessary to protect peace. Lyra looked at Lisa and Carl and made a decision. Thank you for everything. We will present your offer to the council. I believe they will accept. After what happened with the Kresh, I think my people are ready to admit that the galaxy is more dangerous than we thought. That is all we ask, Lisa said. Learn from this. Grow stronger, and hopefully we can build something good together. Friends watching out for each other. Lyra smiled, a genuine smile this time. Friends? Yes. That sounded very good indeed. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Titan. He watched the countdown clock tick toward 0. His bridge crew worked around him with smooth, practiced movements. This was his third rescue mission since the Titan had been assigned to Frontier Patrol 6 months ago. His crew knew exactly what to do. Emergence in 5 seconds, Lieutenant Emma Chen called out from her station. All ships reporting ready. Jake pulled up the tactical display on his screen. 12 ships flew with him in this task force. The Titan was a heavy cruiser covered with railguns and missile launchers. 4 destroyers flew beside her. 5 frigates provided support. 2 supply vessels carried extra ammunition and fuel. Together, they had more firepower than most alien species had ever seen on starships. Humans had learned an important lesson early in their space exploration. When you went into a fight, you brought overwhelming force. If you could not do that, you did not go at all. Emergence now, Emma announced. Reality twisted around them. The Titan drive tore open a hole in normal space. The task force jumped through that hole. Stars spun, space folded in on itself. Then they were there, at the edge of the Valorian system. All systems working normally, Commander Kyle Bennett reported from the tactical station. His screens lit up with contacts. Sensor sweep complete. I am picking up the emergency beacon from the 4th planet. Also detecting 12 hostile vessels heading toward that planet. They are 3 hours away from bombardment range. Jake studied the tactical map. The enemy ships, these Kresh raiders, were spread out in a loose group. They were probably trying to cover more area for their attack. Their ships were big, ugly, crude things. They were built to scare people, not to fight efficiently. The Kresh relied on having more ships and shocking their victims. That was their first mistake. Send a message to Valorian Command, Jake ordered. Tell them United Earth forces have arrived and are moving to stop the hostile ships. Tell them to clear all orbital space around their planet. Signal sent, sir, Lieutenant Ryan Parker confirmed from the communications console. A moment later, he looked up with a puzzled expression. Captain, we are receiving a response. They are asking if we are sure we want to fight. They are warning us that the Kresh have 12 warships and we are outnumbered. A soft laugh went through the bridge crew. Kyle looked up from his station with a grin on his face. They think we are outnumbered? Jake allowed himself a small smile. These Valorians were civilians. They were peaceful traders and farmers who probably thought war meant ships taking turns shooting at each other from far away. They had no idea what real combat looked like. They did not understand that numbers meant nothing if you had better weapons and training. Send them our thanks for their concern, Jake said. Tell them we have the situation under control. Kyle, bring all ships to combat stations. All ships are free to fire when ready. Let us end this quickly. Yes, sir. The Titan came to life. The lights on the bridge changed to combat red. Throughout the ship, doors sealed shut. Crews ran to their battle stations. Weapon systems powered up. The 4 destroyers, named Atlas, Phoenix, Neptune, and Zeus, moved into attack formation. The frigates spread out to create a defensive screen. Hostile vessels are reacting to our arrival, Kyle reported. They are breaking formation. 6 ships are continuing toward the planet. 6 are turning to engage us, idiots, Emma muttered. They are splitting their forces, Jake nodded. It was a basic tactical mistake. You never divided your forces when facing an unknown enemy. But the Kresh were raiders, not real soldiers. They were used to scaring civilians and attacking defenseless trading ships. They had never fought actual warships before. Targeting solutions locked, Kyle announced. All ships report ready to fire. We are receiving a signal from the Kresh, Ryan said. They are demanding that we leave immediately or face destruction. Jake checked the range display. The Kresh ships were still 15 million kilometers away. That was far outside their weapons range. But it was well within Earth weapon range. Human railguns could reach out much farther than most alien weapons. No response needed, Jake said. Kyle, fire when ready, firing now. The Titan shook as her forward railguns fired. Tungsten slugs shot out at a fraction of light speed. Across the task force, the other ships opened fire at the same moment. Missiles streaked through space, their engines pushing them faster than any biological pilot could survive. The Kresh never knew what hit them. At 15 million kilometers away, their sensors barely registered the human ships as dangerous before the first shots arrived. Tungsten penetrators moving at 5% of light speed hit with the power of small nuclear bombs. Missiles locked onto engine signatures and exploded, overwhelming point defenses that were not designed to handle such advanced threats. In less than 3 minutes, 6 Kresh warships simply stopped existing. The other 6 ships, still heading toward the planet, desperately tried to turn around and run away. "Target the fleeing vessels," Jake ordered. "Do not let any of them escape." The human ships accelerated forward. Their fusion drives pushed them at speeds the Kresh ships could never match. It was not even a real chase. It was more like an execution. The Kresh tried everything. They fired their weapons, but the human ships were too far away and moving too fast. They released clouds of chaff and decoys, but human sensors cut through them like they were not even there. They begged for mercy over open channels, but Jake had seen the burned planet. He had read the reports about 2 million civilians killed in an afternoon. The Kresh had shown no mercy then. They would receive none now. One by one, the remaining Kresh ships died. Railgun slugs punched through their hulls. Missiles found their weak points and detonated inside. 12 minutes after the battle began, it was over. 12 Kresh warships destroyed. 0 human casualties. Not a single human ship even had damage to report. "Stand down from combat stations," Jake said quietly. "Ryan, send a message to the Valorians. Tell them the threat has been eliminated. Tell them we are standing by to provide any assistance they need." On the tactical display, the Valorian home planet hung peacefully in space, safe once more. Around him, the bridge crew relaxed. They were already running post-battle reports and checking their systems. Just another day at work for them. Jake wondered what the Valorians had thought when they watched the battle. Had they expected some long conflict? Days of careful maneuvering and posturing? He shook his head slightly. They would learn soon enough that when you called Earth for help, you got Deathworlders, and Deathworlders did not believe in fair fights. They believed in winning fast and going home alive. "Message received from the Valorians," Ryan reported. "They are thanking us. They are also asking how we destroyed 12 ships so quickly. They sound confused, sir. Tell them we will explain everything when we meet in person. Prepare a shuttle. I will go down to the planet myself to coordinate with their government." Jake stood and stretched. The battle had lasted 12 minutes, but he had been standing tensely the entire time. Now the adrenaline was fading and he could feel the fatigue creeping in. Kyle would take command of the Titan while Jake was on the surface. The task force would maintain patrol positions around the system, making sure no other threats appeared. He thought about the upcoming meeting with the Valorian leaders. They would be scared, probably. Grateful, certainly. But also uncertain about what humanity wanted in return for this help. That was always the hard part of first contact with new species. Everyone assumed humans wanted something. Payment, territory, resources, control. The truth was simpler and somehow harder to explain. Humans just wanted friends, allies, trading partners. After 40 years of being treated like dangerous animals by the Galactic Council, Earth had learned that the best way to change minds was through actions. Save people, help them. Ask for nothing in return except friendship. Slowly, species would realize that the scary Deathworlders were actually the best neighbors you could ask for. It was working too. 3 species had already signed mutual defense treaties with Earth. 5 more were in negotiations. The Galactic Council was getting nervous about it, which was fine with Jake. Let them be nervous. Maybe it would motivate them to actually help people instead of just talking about it in committee meetings. "Sir, shuttle is ready," Emma reported. "Thank you, Lieutenant. Kyle, you have the bridge." Jake headed for the shuttle bay. Time to meet the Valorians and show them that Deathworlders could be gentle too, at least when people were not trying to kill innocents. When that happened, well, the Kresh had just learned what human mercy looked like. Quick, efficient, and absolutely final. The Valorian star system had been quiet for 300 years. 7 planets circled a gentle blue sun. 3 of those planets had people living on them. The Valorians were tall and thin, with skin that looked almost see-through. When their sun hit their skin just right, it shimmered like water. They had learned how to travel between stars about 60 years ago, but they never went far from home. Why would they? They had everything they needed right there. Everything changed when the Kresh arrived. Ambassador Lyra stood in the main communication room. Her hands shook as she stared at the screen in front of her. 12 big Kresh warships had shown up at the edge of their system 3 days ago. The Kresh were known across the galaxy as thieves and killers. They flew from system to system, taking whatever they wanted and destroying the rest. They had already attacked the colony on Valor 7. 2 million people lived there. Now they were all dead. The Kresh had burned the entire planet in just one afternoon. The Valorian military was small. They had 15 patrol ships that were built for mining asteroids and stopping small pirates. The commanders had sent all 15 ships to fight the Kresh. All 15 were now floating in space as broken pieces of metal. Lyra had sent emergency messages on every channel she could find. The Galactic Council had responded with kind words and promises to talk about the problem in their next meeting. That meeting was 4 months away. The Talani Federation sent a message saying they would pray for Valoria. The Zephyr Collective said they were very concerned and suggested filling out the proper request forms for emergency help. Nobody was coming to save them. Soren worked at the communication station. He was young and his skin kept changing colors as he got more worried. Orange and dark purple flashed across his body. Suddenly he sat up straight. "Ambassador, we got a response to our emergency call, but these people are not in our database. I've never heard of them before." Lyra hurried to his station. For the first time in days, she felt a tiny bit of hope. "Who are they?" "They call themselves United Earth Command. They are responding from about 3 light years away. They say they got our emergency message and they are already on their way. They will be here in 14 hours. Soren paused. His skin turned white with confusion. 14 hours? That was impossible. The nearest Galactic Council station was 5 days away using the fastest hyperspace engines. Either these humans had technology far beyond anything the Council knew about, or they were lying. "Search our database. Look for anything about Earth, humans, or this United Earth Command." Soren typed quickly on his screen. A moment later, his skin went completely pale, almost transparent. "Ambassador, I found something. It is in the restricted files. You need level 7 clearance to read it." Lyra entered her security codes. The file opened. As she read the words, the hope in her chest turned ice cold. The file said Earth was also called Sol 3. It was classified as a death world. The gravity there was much stronger than normal. The air pressure was higher too. The planet had an extreme number of predators. Natural disasters happened all the time. The official recommendation was to avoid all contact with Earth. The humans who lived there were classified as apex predators. Their threat level was listed as maximum. The file had more information from old exploration missions. The humans had been discovered 40 years ago by a Talani survey ship. The Talani had made first contact and immediately wished they had not. The humans were not hostile, but their world had made them into something frightening. Earth was a nightmare planet. The weather could kill you. The animals hunted in groups. Diseases changed faster than medicine could keep up. And somehow the humans had become the dominant species on that terrible world. They had not survived because they were stronger or faster than the predators. They survived because they were stubborn, smart, and refused to die no matter what. The Galactic Council had quietly agreed to keep humanity at a distance. The humans were too dangerous, not because they were aggressive, but because they came from a world that would kill most species in days. The Council was afraid of what creatures like that might do if they ever turned their survival skills toward conquest. There were notes about human biology. They could survive injuries that would kill other species. They could eat foods that were toxic to most life forms. They could adapt to environments ranging from frozen wastelands to burning deserts. They had eyes that faced forward like predators. Their teeth included sharp points for tearing meat. Even their social structure was built around hunting and warfare. The file included a warning written by a Talani diplomat. These beings smile to show friendship, but when they smile, you see the teeth of a predator. They are kind and helpful, but never forget what they are. They are survivors from a world that tried to kill them for millions of years. That experience is written into every cell of their bodies, Soren whispered from his station. Ambassador, should we tell them not to come? Lyra looked at the tactical screen. It showed the Kresh fleet moving slowly but steadily toward their home planet. She thought about the 2 million dead on Valor 7. She thought about the billions more who would die if the Kresh were not stopped. Then she looked back at the file about humanity. Apex predators from a death world. Survivors who refused to quit. Fighters who had beaten a planet that spent millions of years trying to kill them. Maybe that was exactly what they needed right now. No, she said quietly. We asked for help. Let us see what kind of monsters we have called. Soren looked uncertain but nodded. He turned back to his screen and sent a response to the humans. The message was simple: thank you for responding. Please hurry. We do not have much time. The reply came back almost instantly. Understood. We are coming as fast as we can. Hold on. Lyra stood in the communication center and watched the clock count down. 14 hours until the humans arrived. Would they be saviors or something worse? She did not know. But the Kresh fleet was only 3 days away from beginning their attack on the home planet. 3 days until billions of her people would start dying. She had no choice. She had rolled the dice and called for help from apex predators. Now all she could do was wait and hope that she had not made a terrible mistake. The humans were coming. For better or worse, the Deathworlders were on their way.